Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Like every week, this is our weekly get together, really just a chance to be together, speak a little bit, daven a little bit. And as always, if anybody has anything they'd like to say or they'd like to share, you want to put it in the chat or you want to speak at the end, everybody is more than welcome. We will follow more or less the format we've been doing every week. There's no guest speaker tonight. Tonight you're just stuck with me. But we will begin with some Tehillim. We'll begin with some Tehillim as we always do. We are saying lots and lots of Tehillim, but of course we can't have too many Tehillim. I'm sure everybody's aware there's heavy fighting going on in Gaza all the time, and we want to pray for the success of our soldiers, for the safe return of the hostages. They should all come home soon, safely, and of course for the success of all of Am Yisrael. So I will put the Tehillim up on screen, the two Tehillim which we've been saying every day, Kuf Kaf Aleph and Kuf Lamed, followed by the Mishaberach. So I'm going to ask everyone to mute themselves and please say along with me. Okay, you should be able to see it. Should be able to see it on screen. We'll begin with Tehillim Kuf Kaf Aleph. שיר למעלות, תסייני להרים מעין, יבוא עזרי, מעם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל, אדוני שומרך, אדוני צילך על יד ימינך, יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה, אדוני ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. קל"ד. שיר המעלות ממעמקים קראתיך, אדוני, אדוני, שמע בקולי, תהיינה אוזניך קשובות לכל תחנוני, עם עוונות תשמור יה, אדוני מי יעמוד, כי עמך סליחה, למען תברא, קיוויתי אדוני כפתה נפשי, ולדברו חרתי נפשי, לאדוני משומרים לבוקר, שומרים לבוקר, יחל ישראל אל אדוני, כי אם אדוני החסד, והרבה מופדות, והוא יפדה את ישראל מכל עוונותיו. משברך לחיילי צה"ל, משברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל וכוחות הביטחון וכל האזרחים בקו האש העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמרם מכל צרה וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה. וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם ויעטרם בחטא ישועה ועטרת ניצחון. ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם, להילחם לכם אויביכם, להושיע אתכם, ונאמר אמן. משברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, יוסף, משה ואהרון, דוד ושלמה, הוא יברך וישמור וינצור את אחינו בית ישראל השפויים. בעבור שאנו מתפעלים בעבורם, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, ישמרם מכל צרה וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. יוציאם מחושך וצל מוות, וישיבם מהרה לחיק משפחותיהם, ונאמר אמן. הפצועים, משברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, משה ואהרון, דוד ושלמה, יברך וירפא את כל הפצועים מהפיגועים ומהמלחמה. הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא רחמים עליהם, להחלימם, לרפאותם, להחזיקם, להחיותם, ישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, לכל אבריהם, לכל גדיהם, בתוך שאוכלי ישראל, בפרט הנפש, בפרט הגוף, ושתה בעגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. אחינו, כל בית ישראל, הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בהם בים ובהם ביבשה, המקום ירחם עליהם, ויוצאים מצרה לרווחה, ומאפלה לאורה, משיבוד לגאולה, השתה בעגלה בזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. Okay, just mention again, people are all the time asking what they can do, and we're always trying to do what we can, to support our chayalim. So of course we have the Tehillim, we have Tefillah, we have Limud Torah. We've just started over the past couple of weeks collecting donations as well. I've been taking a number of people have given donations for the Hamal, which is the local center, which is coordinating efforts. And they are donating supplies to both to soldiers and to families in the south and the north, families that have been evacuated. There's a list which changes every day and based on what they have and based on what's needed. So thank you very much to all those who've already donated. Last week, I delivered an entire trolley full from Asherat of all different supplies. I'm going to be going every week and giving supplies based on what is needed. So anybody who would like to donate to that is welcome to. You can just you can be in contact with me, or you can give me the money, and I will make sure that that gets to where it needs to go. There is another initiative for the Kohanim amongst us, which Paul Bloom has been involved in, which I know he was visiting some soldiers this week. And Paul, maybe you can just share with us a little bit about what you've been doing and what kind of reaction there was from the Chayalim.
Sure. So a fellow Kohen of mine was at Kennedy Airport, and he saw a Chayal bringing about 24 suitcases worth of stuff back there to Israel. So he walked over to him and he gave him a bracha. And the Kohen the soldier was very, very touched by that. So we had the idea of saying, hey, let's see if we can get Kohen around the world to give brachas to our soldiers. So what we did is we opened up a WhatsApp with intent of getting names of soldiers, like Avram and Sarah. We don't have the last name, don't have the location of the soldiers. And with a bracha, videotape it. And the person who actually came to us. Over the past couple of weeks, we collected roughly about 1,500 Kohanim who joined the group. We've given over 1,000 brachas to soldiers throughout the country. Last week, I had the opportunity going with Chabad of Rehavia to an army base in central Israel, where we met with roughly about 100 soldiers. And we gave brachas to those soldiers and gave them words of chizuk. It was very moving for me. We also gave out about 100 pairs of camouflage tzitzits, which, interesting enough, were mostly taken by what I would consider chilunim soldiers. As I guess they say, there's no such thing as atheists in foxholes. So they're looking for anything that could potentially give them an extra edge of protection. It's be the bracha from a Kohen. So they were very, very appreciative, and it was very inspiring, to us to see the type of soldiers that we have on the front line that are really defending us. So if anyone knows of any Kohanim who would like to join, or if you have names of soldiers that are not on the shul's list, I've taken the shul's list and given it to our Kohanim, as well as the list that Mizrahi has. We'd be more than glad to take those names and give those soldiers brachas from the Kohanim who have joined us.
Okay, beautiful. Yasher koach. Thank you. It's very, very moving. I'll mention, these things, all these initiatives, and it's amazing how quickly they spread around the world. I mentioned, Paul sent me this information. I sent it to a couple of Kohanim that I know in London, and both of them had already seen it from somewhere else, and they're also part of this army. So we're all doing our bit, all doing what we can. And few words of chizuk we'll try and share as well. Yesterday, you may be aware, was the third yard site of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And he was somebody who felt very, very strongly about Medinat Israel, about the state of Israel, about Chayalei Tzahal. He was very, very vocal in his support for us all and about the need to stand up against anti-Semitism. He spoke about it many times. There are some very, very powerful and moving speeches that you can find online as well. I saw somebody send me today a video that was made, a speech that was made on the occasion of his yortzeit by his daughter, talking about what would Rabbi Sachs, what would he have to say to us if he were here now? Obviously, nobody knows, but probably few people are better placed than his daughter to say what her father would have said. I want to share with you the video. I think it's quite moving as well. So I'm going to put that up now, and we'll see that, and afterwards we will share a few other ideas.
The world needs voices of hope, of moral courage, of moderation. Voices that remind us of the role faith has to play in healing the world, not hurting it. Voices that help us to see the dignity of difference and have the courage to believe in a better world. Over the past weeks, since the horrific terrorist attacks in Israel, there have been countless times when I have asked myself and been asked by others, what would my father have said to us if he was here? We have been desperate for words of comfort or guidance or hope. Words that could put some order or perspective around this chaos. Rarely have I felt his absence as strongly as these past weeks. I don't know what he would have told us to do next, how to move forward from here. But as I spent time with that thought, I realized there is something I think I do know. I think I know what he would have told us not to do. Firstly, do not, even for a moment, accept that this is the way the world is. We would perhaps be forgiven when faced with such immense tragedy if we were to seek comfort and tell ourselves that maybe somehow this is a part of God's plan, that we don't understand it, but we can accept it, that maybe we are destined to be a people who dwells alone, a people always under threat. No, we must not accept this. As my father wrote and taught in Judaism, faith is not acceptance, but protest against the world that is, in the name of the world that is not yet, but ought to be. And so we must protest. We will not accept it. This is not the way the world is meant to be, and we will constantly call that out. Secondly, do not, even for a moment, despair. Despair, my father wrote, is not a Jewish emotion. Od lo abda tikvatenu. Our hope, we say, has never been destroyed. But that is no small task. It takes a great deal of courage to have hope. Optimism is a passive virtue, a belief that things will get better, whereas hope is active, the belief that we can make them better. At its ultimate, he wrote, hope is the belief not that God has written the script of history, but simply that he has given us the means to save us from ourselves, that we are not wrong to dream and wish and work for a better world. So we must find the strength to hope and not to despair. And thirdly, do not forget why we are here. The state of Israel and the Jewish people face a monumental task right now. But when we cry out, when we hope, when we fight injustice, we are doing so not just for ourselves. Judaism, my father taught, is not for Jews alone. He wrote, the struggle against Israel is no longer just against Israel. What is at stake in Israel's survival is the future of freedom itself. Because make no mistake, this will be the defining battle of the 21st century. Which will prevail? The will to power, with its violence, terror, missiles and bombs, or the will to life, with its hospitals, schools, freedoms and rights? And wider still, he taught that the world in the 21st century needs the Jewish people. It needs Judaism. In an age of ecological devastation, it needs the Jewish reminder that we are placed on earth as Adam was, to serve it and conserve it. In an age of economic inequalities, it needs the Jewish insistence on tzedakah, charity, as justice. In an age of terror, it needs the Jewish insistence on the sanctity of life. Today, more than ever, I think he would tell us not to forget that we must stand tall, stay true to why we are here, and have the courage to engage with the world and all its challenges. We cannot let ourselves be defined by those who hate us. We will be defined by being a blessing to the world. And as my father wrote, all the pain and all the heartbreak are bearable if we can discern God's purpose or hear, however muffled, his call. As Nietzsche used to say, he who has a strong enough why can bear almost any how. I cannot know what my father would have told us to do, but maybe that is a start. Do not accept, cry out, protest. Do not despair, have the courage to hope. And do not lose sight of why you are a Jew and why now more than ever the world needs Judaism and the state of Israel to be a blessing to others and a model of hope so that we can begin to heal some of this so fractured world. Thank you.
Okay, so there's some words of hope, some call to action, a bit of sense, and a bit of from those words, that message, from the words and from the teachings of Rabbi Sachs. I will just to add a few things. As always, let us look to the parsha to give us a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of strength. I mentioned last week that particularly now, if we look at the parashiyot each week, Bereshit, talking about Tohu Vavohu, and then talking about the battle of good versus evil. We went into Noach, Vatimalei Aretz Hamas. We went into Lech Lecha, dealing with the wars and hostages and captives, and it's quite uncanny. You look at these Parashiyot HaShavua, it's really have all come alive. The words of the Siddur, I think, if we are attuned to them, and if we are listening to them and listening to the words that we say each day, they come alive with meaning more profound perhaps than ever before. The words of Tanakh, certainly the words of Parashat Shavua, come alive maybe as never before. We just had Parashat Vayera. We read the Akedah. How many Akedot, how many sacrifices have we seen, have we experienced tragically over these past few weeks? And this week we get to Chayei Sarah. Chayei Sarah, I'll share with you an idea which I've mentioned before, but I think we can understand it so much deeper right now, in a way that we probably couldn't have related to previously. And that is the following. That is the idea. We know Avraham Avinu's 10 tests. Asara Nisyonot Nasa Avraham Avinu. The Mishnah Pirkei Avot tells us that Avraham underwent the 10 trials. It's generally accepted by the Mfarshim that they went in ascending order of difficulty. So the easiest one became first, and the final test was the most difficult. According to many of the Mfarshim, that was the Akedah. And what could be more difficult than the Akedah? What could be more difficult than Avram being told to go and to sacrifice his own son who he had prayed for so many years, son who he had davened for, son who was the fulfillment of everything he had wished for, and Hashem had promised him, B'Yitzchak yikareh lecha zera, and now in this impossible command, he was told to sacrifice. What could be more difficult than that? And says the Rabbeinu Yonah, a lone opinion amongst the commentaries, but he says that in fact the Akedah was not the final ordeal, but that the final ordeal was Kfurat Sarah, was the buying of what we read about this week, the purchase of Marata Machpelah, 400 shekel kesef from Ephron Achiti, and burying Sarah. What made it so difficult? And there are many answers, and we've discussed some of them. But one which I think particularly resonates, and this is something I heard from Rabbi J.J. Shechter, he quoted in the name of his father. His father was the late Rav Herschel Shechter, who was a chaplain in the U.S. Army. And he was present at the liberation of Buchenwald. And Rav Shechter said that in our days, we are uniquely placed to understand what this could be and what this ordeal was. He says, you have to understand that Avraham, after he went through the Akedah, after he went through the 10 nisyonot and the 10 ordeals, he must have thought to himself that now was the time to cash in on the reward. Now was the time that there were no ordeals left. He's done it all. He's done it all. There's nothing left. There's nothing left possibly to challenge him. Now must be the time that the promises that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made to him will be fulfilled. He's promised him a land. He's promised him his children. Now is the time. He's been through the Akedah. What comes next? And what comes next is remarkable. What comes next is it's completely the opposite. It's not that he's able to sit back on his laurels and cash in. He has to fight. He has to negotiate. He has to haggle. He has to deal with people who deny his very right to be in the land. He has to deal with people who deny his very right to be. And that is what he has after the Akedah, the fact that there is another ordeal. You see, the ordeal, he explained, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, the ordeal of Kvurat Sarah, of the purchase of Marata Mechpelah, was that this was an ordeal at a time when there were no ordeals left. This was a nisayon that came after he had been through everything, after he had been through the worst. and after he had withstood it, now was the time to raise his hands and say, okay, Hashem, now is the time. Give me the promises. Give me the land. Let me rest. And it doesn't rest. It doesn't come easy. He doesn't own a single piece of land. And even to purchase a burial plot for his dear wife, look at what he has to go through. And said Rabbi Schechter, who, as I said, was there at the liberation of Buchenwald, he said, our generation, saying this 75 years ago, 80 years ago, he says, our generation has been through an Akedah too. Our generation has been through 6 million Akedah. And this is the time, and this was true 75 years ago, and this is certainly true since 30 days ago as well. In a time having gone through such sacrifice, after having gone through such suffering, after having gone through it all, one must have been going through the Chevlei Mashiach, going through the final Nisayon. We must have said to ourselves, surely now is the time to cash in. Surely now, Ribono Shel Olam, now is the time to fulfill the promises. Let us sit peacefully in our land. Let us sit securely in our land. Let us cash in and let us do what we need to do. And yet, no, we find that every single day we are being challenged. We've been challenged, as I said, 75 years ago. Certainly every single one of us feels it in the last 30 days. Challenged, whether that's enemies that are coming in to attack us, that are coming in to try and murder us. Whether it's around the world, there are people, again, this very day, marches all over the capitals of Europe, of America, people who deny our existence to be here, who deny our existence to be. Yeah, that is the ordeal. The ordeal is that we still have those ordeals, that we are still fighting, that even after the Akedah that we went through, the 6 million Akedot we went through 80 years ago, the 1,400 Akedot that we went through in the past month and more that continue each day, nonetheless, there is still a challenge, there is still negotiation, there is still a fight. We are still in it. That is the ordeal, and that is the Nisayon. That is the Nisayon that Avraham Avinu went through, which he overcame. And we are the descendants of Avraham Avinu. We go through the same Nisyonot, and just as he overcame, so too we know that surely we will overcome as well. There is a beautiful line which I think summarizes everything, which we find in the Tefillah of Rosh Hashanah. It's not in the Ashkenazi custom. If I had the ability to change one thing from the Machzor, which I don't and I won't, but if there's one thing that is missing, so to speak, there is a piyut which the Sfaradim say on Rosh Hashanah, which the Ashkenazim don't say, which we're really missing out, and that is the piyut of Sharei Et Ratzon. One year I davened with a Sfardi minyan Rosh Hashanah, so there was no Unatane Tokef. I felt robbed of my Rosh Hashanah, but I had the Sharei Et Ratzon. And in the Sharei Et Ratzon is a piyut which describes the Akedah, and it describes the thoughts, the emotions, the speech. Avraham and Yitzchak going together towards the Akedah, incredibly moving, incredibly profound piyut. And there is a line in there, and this line I heard Miriam Peretz, who two of her sons were killed fighting for Tzahal. She quoted this line and she said, "This is the line which is us. This is what defines what Am Yisrael is, and this defines what we are going through." And as the piyut describes how Avraham is going together with Yitzchak up onto the mountain, he is bounding him up. It says, "Ayin b'mal bocha v'lev sameach, oked v'ne'ekad v'mizbeach." Ayin b'mal bocha, an eye which cries in tears, bitter in tears. Ayin b'mal bocha v'lev sameach, yet a heart which is glad. How is it possible? How can it be? How can it be ayin b'mal bocha v'lev sameach? You're crying or you're laughing, you're rejoicing or you're mourning. It can't be both. It can't be at the same time. As we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, it can and it is, and that is exactly what we are. That is exactly what Am Yisrael is. And who better to talk about it than Miriam Peretz? We heard Rabbi D speak about it last week as well. Heard Rav Doron Peretz discuss also the same idea. All these people, which is all of us, that there is pain and there is grief and there are tears and there is mourning, there is churban. And at the same time as that there is churban, without belittling that in any way, but there is binyan as well. And there is also building. And there is that gladness of heart. There is gladness of knowing who we are, of knowing what we are, of knowing what our purpose is in the world, knowing what our mission is in the world, knowing that we are no less than the ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every time that we take out the Sefer Torah, every time during the week, on Shabbat, on Yom Tov, whenever it is, we say, Vayhi bin Sa'aron v'yom Moshe, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha. It does not say, the passage doesn't say, v'yafutzu oivei Yisrael. It doesn't say let the enemies of Am Yisrael be scattered. It says Vayafutzu oivecha, your enemies, Ribono Shel Olam. Anybody who fights against Am Yisrael in the world is fighting against God himself. And we know that is where that Lev Sameach comes from. We know that we are his people. We know that we are fulfilling his mission. We know ultimately that we will succeed. That is how we can have that Lev Sameach. At the same time, Ain B'ma Bocha, there is a price to pay. There is pain and there is grief. There is worry, as we've discussed many times. Eit livkot veit lischok. It's all one and the same. It's all at the same time. But let us not lose sight. Not lose sight again of the goal. Not lose sight of the mission. Not lose sight of the purpose of who we are and what we are doing in this world. And hopefully that is something that can give us strength, that can give us resilience, that can give us the stamina to get through these difficult days, to get through them together. As it says, as the stamps on the eggs say, "V'yachad nenatzeach," right? Together, we will get through it, and together we will be victorious. Zil, Adkan, that's what I have to say. Again, I'm going to open it up to the floor. If past experience is anything to go by, nobody will say anything, but feel free if you would like, and if not,
I'd like to mention something, Rabbi.
Yeah, Menachem.
Okay, I'd like to just mention an initiative that really we need volunteers, if you have the time. My son, shortly after who lives in Chashmonayim, shortly after the war began, asked some of his friends in Chashmo who were doctors if they want to volunteer to help in the hospitals. And his wife, my daughter-in-law, sent out a WhatsApp to her friends about this. So it went viral. And within 24 to 36 hours, more than 7,000 doctors from 45 countries answered the WhatsApp volunteering their services of every specialty you can think of. So now in his house, they have a nerve center with computers and everything else working to process these applicants. They're neurosurgeons, they're family doctors, they're orthopedic surgeons, anesthesiologists, and it's a tedious process. The doctors had to send in their medical licenses and their passports and their specialty certifications. So we're going through it at a very steady pace. They need people there. They are working daily on this. They're coordinating this with the Ministry of Health and the Israel Medical Association. And if anybody has time, several hours a day, 1 or 2 days a week, whatever it is, you can. I'll tell you how to get to their house. They're in Chashmonayim. He's working in. My son Yigal is working in conjunction with my daughter Eliana, who runs Ima Care, and this is how the country is getting volunteer doctors to help staff the hospitals and to deal with the wounded. So if people are available, you can contact me and put the time in. Yeah, if you have some computer skills, it's helpful, but they will train you in what you have to do.
Okay, thank you, Shakoach. Sounds like a great initiative, really important. And if anybody's able to help, or anybody else who can, please be in touch with Menachem. Okay, have a good night, everybody. Have a good week. See you all next week.
Good night.
Thank you, Rabbi Kenigsberg. Thank you.